Greetings, Darklings, from across the interweb. It's once again I, the Duchess, Precious Ken, and I have a new flat cap today, so I guess I'm here in support of IPAs in Boston in some way. I'm also rocking this gorgeous Sunshine Blind t-shirt with the wonderful and talented Miss Blind Carolyn herself, which is a great tie to our special guest on the podcast today. I have none other than the Wolf Lord, Stoneburner, ego likeness, painter and contributor extraordinaire, Mr. Stephen Archer. How are you today?
I'm good. It's cool that you mentioned Caroline. She was an opening act for Ego a few years ago. But the more remarkable part is that one of my very, very first shows all the way back in 1991 or 2 was opening for them and an Apocalypse Theater.
Yeah.
And then we would just run into each other over the years because they were always on tour. And I would always kind of keep an eye on how they were doing things. Like they were one of the first bands I ever saw that brought even minimally their own lights, but it made a difference. And so I always, it made me very aware early on how important that was.
Sure.
Carolyn's fantastic. She's just one of the best people. It's always wonderful that she is just out there chugging away and doing what she does,
She does just have wonderful energy and positivity. And no, I mean, from talking to her, and she has some exciting stuff coming up too. Katie and I were just talking about a show she has coming up in England that just really, really cool, and I'm excited for her about. And I really know, she kind of went through some, I don't know, tough things about the industry in terms of, when she was in her career and doing it, and her perseverance of coming back from it, from like crap like Andrew Eldritch and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just always really impressed by that. She just always kept her chin up and kept marching. And so I got all good things for Carolyn, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that it's, if it's what you do, it's what you do, and I think for many of us, we don't really have a choice. We just, shit happens, you deal with it, and you keep going.
Truth. So we have a lot to cover on this. We hadn't talked in a minute, I think, since the last time was when you released the Sellout video. And you've had a lot going since then. And so I kind of got a little checklist here. It's almost like I'm prepared or something that I want to run through and just kind of get an update from you, what you have going and excited. Probably the most exciting part, obviously, is you have a tour that's coming up. And with Bradley Bills of Chant, who I'm a huge fan of, and I'm really excited. And one of the shows that you guys are playing is over in Detroit right around my birthday. So I feel like this was you trying to give a birthday present to me that I will get to go out and see.
Absolutely. Well, when we spoke to our booking agent, we wanted to make sure that happened.
Exactly. So I will see you there at Smalls in Detroit. But why don't you tell me a little bit about, because for every tour that you do, you go out on the road. I love this about you spend your downtime working on how can I build it bigger, meaner, harder, something else, like you said, to see. You take the visual component so much. And Bradley hasn't been on tour in a half minute. So I know he's been coming up with ideas, and he always has such a spectacle show too, especially in terms of the percussion. He's a drummer guy first that builds around that and adds pieces in. So tell me a little bit about what's going to be new for this tour and what people can be excited to see.
Well, honestly, I do have a few tricks up my sleeve, but I don't want to really blow it yet. I actually just got some new lighting that I'm excited about. I'm only going to have one of the we've actually kind of stripped things down because I only have one of the drummers for a good chunk of the tour, and then for the tail end I'll have both. But mostly it's just about taking what I was doing. I did a short run last fall, and that kind of got the kinks out of a lot of these ideas. And so now I've got that all focused and worked out. So, it's really just about that. And then trying to work in, there's a lot of little Easter eggs in the set musically. So that's going to be a fun thing. There's some more with the wolf stuff. So I'm just excited to go out with Bradley. We took him out with Ego 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. Actually, maybe even longer than that. Might have been about 10. As our opening act. And when I was trying to come up with who I was going to bring out for this tour, I couldn't think of anybody that made sense for Stoneburner except Chad. Like they're the only band I can think of off the top of my head that, well, A, I trust, and B, they're just that good. But also that is even kind of sonically in the realm of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. As somebody as a music reviewer, like, when I'm kind of challenged to think of someone in the realm to put in a box with Stoneburner in some way,
right,
that's a real challenge because it is just, I don't know, a very different blending of sounds, and especially when it comes to the percussion. And I think that, Bradley maybe is kind of one of the only people that is looking at industrial music somewhat through that lens. But I also think you guys have a lot of differences between you, which are going to be really cool when they show up on stage as contrast together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that's, and honestly, in the end, a lot of it just really comes down to, I need to find people that I know how to do the thing and I don't have to worry about. Like, and that's, even though Bradley hasn't been out recently, he has done plenty of touring. And so we don't have to worry about, like, if they have a problem, obviously they'll let us know and vice versa. But I also know that they're not going to fall apart,
right.
And you have to have that sort of mentality of, well, all right, that just happened and that sucked, but guess what? Doesn't matter. Got another show.
Right.
So that's always a big part of it. And he's just a good guy. He's just a very pleasant person to be around. And we're all in the same kind of age range. And so there's that kind of understanding of the sonic aesthetic that goes along with that.
Sure.
As well. So, and I think that we're both equally frustrated with a lot of what industrial music has kind of turned into, and so we are both trying to kind of go, hey, it's not necessarily about just having hooky dance songs, which is what it's kind of turned into. So
I don't like hooky dance songs, but
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But and it certainly takes a good solid skill set to do that. And actually the next single that I've got coming out is probably one of the most danciest, biggest, dumbest dance songs I've ever written, but very intentionally so, as kind of a stealth message in there. But I look at, when you look at the genre as a whole, and you go, wow, we work in this thing where we can make anything. We can make any sound out of anything. Yeah. And it doesn't have to, like if you look back when I was younger in the late 80s, early 90s, and there were dance songs, or rather there were songs you could dance to, but that wasn't the point of them.
Right.
And the point was to write good songs that, talked about something, had content to them. And I think a lot of that has been lost.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying on that, and I agree in the sense that, I don't know, say when we're doing something, I like to do a cover now and then, but like I would never want to do more than one per record usually or something, or the same kind of things with just dance bangers. Fuck yeah, everybody needs dance bangers.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But the origins of industrial music, as kind of you're saying, were always about making people a little bit uncomfortable in a way,
Yeah.
stepping outside, stretching the sonic boundaries of what the ear is happy to hear, and throbbing your gristle like outdoors of that, and I think that if you don't tie back to a little bit of that root in what you're doing, if you're calling yourself industrial music, I think you're missing a big piece of the
Mhm.
pie of why this matters, why it's what makes it fucking punk rock, you know?
Right. Yes. Very much so.
And that is something that I've always kind of loved about the mission of Stoneburner.
Um, and a lot of the other problem I have with a lot of it is it's like I'm angry, blah blah blah. Here's my distorted vocals, things like that. And I just, well, yes, but what are you angry about?
Sure.
If you're going to talk about being angry, it can't just be about like some, nebulous thing.
Yeah.
You can certainly do that, but a lot of people like,
What have you
oh,
got?
I'm 50 at this point, so like if I'm going to talk about being angry, I want to be very fucking specific about these are the things I think are wrong, and these are ways of dealing with it. The new single I'm putting out, "This Machine Kills," this will hopefully be one of the last things that are vaguely political, because I don't like feeling like I need to talk about that kind of stuff. But it's very much there's 3 songs on it, and 2 of them are very much about that, and one's kind of going, hey, all the red hat people, this is a real serious problem, you're being assholes. But it's also kind of going to, hey, guess what, all the people on our team, you're not helping, and here's how. And it's kind of saying, so theoretically, if I do this thing right, I should manage to alienate a good chunk of my fan base on both sides. So that'll be good, I think. That's always the goal. But
I mean, if you're trying to
it's the
search for
truth.
truth, though, like
That's it.
the reality is you're going to piss off both,
Yeah,
likely.
exactly.
If
And I don't feel right doing one and then saying,
yeah.
well, you guys suck, but we're okay. And no, I'm equally pissed off at our team for making things harder than it needs to be, or kind of stabbing themselves in the foot. So I think that it's, in general with music, if you're going to express these really strong emotions, it can't just be about sounding like you're saying something using effects and things like that, or how you deliver it. It's actually saying something and actually trying to communicate these ideas.
So going along with that, so I just had an interview with Rodney Orpheus lately of the Cassandra Complex, who just had first album out in 20 years, which is awesome. It sounds absolutely great. And he was kind of saying a lot the same thing of, I was like, what inspired you after 20 years? I mean, you make your money in other ways. Why do you want to subject yourself to this? Why did you have something new to say? And that was kind of, talking about the anger over the political landscape.
Yeah.
Why are you pissed off, Stephen? At 50 years old, what is really burning?
Why am I pissed off
right now?
There's just so many reasons. I think that you know what, it's really easy to point to all the guys on the red team and say these are the things that are wrong with them. I'm not going to do that.
Because there's plenty.
Because there's plenty. I'll talk about our group.
Okay.
Here's the thing that I think really sucks. And one of the reasons, like, those guys over there actually managed to pull in more votes and things like that is because they're kind of okay going, well, yeah, you're Nazis, but you're against all this other stuff. And so we're going to allow that to kind of be part of it. We're just going to, we're going to choose to ignore that a little bit, even if it makes us uncomfortable, because you're all fighting for the same thing. Sure. Our guys, everybody wants everything subdivided down to exactly the way they want it. And one of the things I was trying to, whenever the elections come up, I'm like, this is triage. You don't get what you want. Not everybody's going to get all the little things that they want. And that doesn't mean that all the other people on your team are the bad guys. It just means that sometimes you need to, like, look at this bigger thing, because I think our guys have this tendency to say, well, there's this problem. Somebody will say, this is the problem. And people on our team will kind of go, well, yes, but what about this and this and this? And if you don't take care of these things, then it's not even worth it. It's like, that's not true. And I think that that's one of the ways that we very much shoot ourselves in the foot. And the frustrating part is some of these are a lot of the elements in this specific song I'm talking about are all from actual real conversations I've had with people. Like I knew this guy who considered himself quite the revolutionary,
Mhm.
and but he never did anything. And at one point, he was like made some comment about, he was like, I was always trying to get him to be more politically active about me, and I was like, hold up, let me tell you all of these things that I have done over the years. And you know why I don't talk to anybody about it, or why you don't know? Because I do it and I move on. It's not who I am. I'm doing these things because they're the right things to do. It's not about trying to,
I don't need everybody to line up to pat me on the back after.
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, you know, or another thing that happened where somebody who I've knew for years was talking about, well, like a while back, somebody lit themselves on fire at the White House. And she was like, well, maybe this will show people and they'll get active and stuff like that. And I was like, you don't even leave your house. How dare you tell all of these other people that they're not doing enough when you're not doing anything?
Yeah.
Like, so
No,
you
I
have to,
hear you on that. Like, and that's
yeah,
a tough one too, because I mean, the other side of that is I love about the left side that they will hold their own team responsible. Whereas I think you're right, is there is just, I mean, the red side has this real tendency to literally, no matter how much they liked her policies or it was better for their lives, or I mean, but her emails, like, no matter what, it wasn't that you couldn't have changed that person's mind if you rolled up a truck with $50,000 in the back and dumped it out on their lawn. If they voted for it, they still wouldn't do it no matter what. And I think that there is more of that on the red than there is on the blue, on that side of it, and that is tough. At the same time, I do love the fact that, like, nobody in a way is kind of above that scruples of looking at, look, you can't just be partway in, you have to always be working on yourself and grow. But you're right, it is a seesaw and difficult in trying to find where the right spot on the line of that is, where you go over and it becomes counterproductive and worse.
right, yeah. And you have to,
Yeah.
it's very easy to get into this mindset where you're everybody is so angry, and it's kind of like they're wearing their anger as this cloak of identification or whatever. And if those things aren't dealt with, by whoever the current political person that we're trying to get into office, if they're not being, giving them exactly what they want, then they lash back out, or will try and, like, make those issues. And it just doesn't work. You have to change the big thing first before you can do all the little stuff. So that's something I find increasingly frustrating. Like, I've got a fan who is very much on the other side, and we've had many private conversations where it's like, look, I'm not happy with what we've got going on either. Like, but I'm you make the best of what you've got,
Right.
And my goal is just to kind of get people to step outside of what their own little fishbowl is saying, are the big things that they need to deal with, and recognize that maybe the bigger thing is not having a whole bunch of racists and just awful human beings getting ahead of us, instead of like, let's worry about the big problem here of these people who are kind of going, a good chunk of the country needs to not be in this country. That's not a good,
it's
a big problem.
No, it is true of picking your battles on some of this,
right?
Which,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
again, it's hard to say because everybody has that person. And here's another thing: take a guy like me. It's real hard for me sometimes to say to someone else, "Hey, pick your battles," because frankly, I'm not fighting those same battles. And like, I don't want to come over here casting a stone of telling them what their experience is. And so, no, it's tough.
You should, because the onus should be really on them to recognize you're on their team. It doesn't mean just because you're I'm Mexican American and you're not, but that doesn't invalidate what you're saying.
Sure, sure.
And, you know, people who use things like that are a huge part of the problem too. Like, hey, you know, people who happen to not be in your peer group can still be right. And part of your job as a grown-ass adult is to be able to maybe consider that and keep that in mind, you know? Um, so, so
And
yeah,
all of
no,
that is communication in both ways and all those
right,
things. But yeah,
right. And how you approach it is certainly obviously a good thing. And by being aware of it, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, people need to not be open to those things and hearing them from every side, you know, not just within that little clique, because that's not going to do anything. I mean, you know, on Facebook, I try very hard to avoid the echo chamber. And it's like, I'd rather have people that are disagreeing as long as they're polite about it. I don't give a shit. That's great. Keep talking. But
I think I've fallen into that one pretty good over the years of just, I have a real tendency to, the minute somebody gets a bit sketchy with me on Facebook, I'm like, you know what, I'm good in life. I don't really need that negativity right now, and peace out.
well,
And
and that's
and so
certainly
then
a
I
healthy way to
do, I
go.
get like way later, and then I hear people and I say to myself, where's all this negativity you're talking about on Facebook? Because I just don't see it. Oh, it's because I've just deleted all those people. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So man, I knew we were going to do this. We'll fall down a rabbit hole and go a place that Sounds and Shadows doesn't, but great discussion. And I love that. I do want to talk about, though, you've had with COP, a big change, and, you know, doing a different label and doing things
Mhm.
differently. I know that's been really exciting for you with this last record, and you've had the singles that have come out of it. What are some of the other things that you have coming up now on the pipeline where you keep telling me you feel more free with
Oh
this
yeah.
label in doing what you're doing and doing the music you've always wanted to make than you ever have? Tell
I've never been restricted by any of the labels that I've been on,
Sure, sure.
but this is much Christian and Cop and John are all, they're so supportive. I feel like, and Dancing Ferret was also like this actually, but I've always felt like I can just pick up the phone and call Christian or John and be like, at one point I texted John, I was like, knowing that you're going to be doing the mixes for me, I have a little John sitting on my shoulder kind of saying, hey, don't do that thing that you're about to do. So you know, and having Christian to brainstorm ideas with, and how do we approach this, and that sort of thing, it's huge. It's huge. And you know, so yes, I do feel very, very free. It's nice knowing that the structure, what I want, the infrastructure is there. So you make the thing, and you know that by the time it comes out, you know, John will have done his magic with mixing it, and so that part's taken care of. So you've kind of resolved your own personal limitations with recording, and then the fact that Cop is going to do everything they can to make sure it gets out there and gets pushed and supports it. Particularly remarkable because I am low man on the totem pole. You know, like they I mean, I guess there are a few other acts that are kind of in a similar level, but I'm not stabbing westward. I'm not Azam Ali. But you wouldn't know it. You know, Christian always has time for me, and all the people involved always do. So just having a label that's actively taking an interest in what you're doing, that you're able to kind of go, I don't think this is the best way to approach this. How about this?
Yeah.
You know, I had some really bad experiences with a label I was on for a while, and so who were kind of the exact opposite. They were completely opaque, and you weren't able to
You know where you
I'm trying to help our business, and you're not. So so this with Cop, it's very much about let's figure out how to make this so it's best for everybody.
So I know because of that open communication, you're kind of saying John, and John does this and John did. But what we're talking about is John Fryer, who,
Yes.
I mean, to me is a legend in this field and has been a part of some of the most important electronic and industrial albums of the last 30 years. Would you say, from now working with him since the last time we talked quite a bit, that the biggest contribution that John adds in to a new Stoneburner album are, as an editor, things that he's saying to you, hey, can we make this leaner? Or is it bringing in a new technique saying, hey, we should maybe think about adding this in, and it was something you didn't think of because of his years of experience and whatnot?
A little bit of both. I gave him free reign with the I just sent him all the files. And I was like, I trust you. I know your aesthetic. I gave I wrote up a big long thing of look, I'm a visual guy. This is how I see how these songs play out. This is the progression of the stories in them. These are the imagery that goes along with it, because we hadn't at that point developed kind of our common language. But you know, in general, like, he just took what I did, polished it up, and there he swapped out some of the sounds, little things that probably most people wouldn't even notice, but he did a really good job of that. And then, like, one of the songs, he was like, this is bothering me. I'm going to redo how this all, there's a version of No Light, No Spark on the record that is different than the single version. Mm-hmm. That's why, because that was the way he felt the song should have worked. And
awesome to hear, like, that level of trust with the producer to really, I mean, hand over your baby and say, I trust you to do whatever tests or things need to be done. You know, that's a
lot of fun,
like, courage thing.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, at this point, like, I feel that I made the record the way it needed to be, you know, as far as the construction of it and all the parts were there, and those were right. So it was really just having somebody then come in and go, okay, well, that's cool, but this part over here, if we swap it out with this, you know, this drum instead of that drum, it's going to sound better. Or, you know, just things that you know, because I'm completely self-taught, so I don't have any, like, you know, I don't have the years of experience that he has. So just going in and kind of trimming down different places where frequencies are stepping on each other, things like that. That would never, like, I remember when I got the Sellout single back, I was listening to it, I was like, this sounds so much better. And I couldn't tell you why, because if I could, I would have done it.
Right.
So that was kind of a neat experience. And the other thing that he was very graciously, we sat on the phone for about an hour or so after the record was done and mixed. And I was like, when I get on the phone with you, and I just want you to tell me all the things I'm doing wrong. And so he sat down and kind of, we went through, you know, not every single thing, but some of, like, the big issues that I was repeatedly doing. So that, and even a lot of it was very simple stuff, but, you know, things that I hadn't noticed, and now I don't not notice it. So it's kind of a neat sort of thing.
I can see that, because that's just it. Like you said, if this was something that was on your radar, obviously you would have done it in the first place.
Right.
And I think that's true for a lot of us, is we have, whether it's in music or anything else, blind spots that, especially when you are a subject matter expert on this. So, like, for maybe a tiny thing that was in your blind spot, like those frequency ranges or something like that, it just never occurred to you because you were thinking of 150 other things.
Right. Yeah.
When it's brought to your attention, though, and you actually get the track back and the wave file, and you hear it and you're like, why has nothing I've ever done sounded like this before? Yep. And he can put that pinpoint on it. That's got to be just, I don't know, like, one of the ways it gets harder as you're 50 years old and you have this level of experience in it. How do you find a way to grow? Because you've had this many experiences piled on each other, it gets harder as you're more of an expert to find ways to do that. So when you do, it makes it so much more meaningful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like if you have an undiagnosed mental illness, and one day you go in and you get it diagnosed, and all of a sudden you're able to kind of go, that's why this happens. Okay, cool. Now I know what's wrong. Now I can deal with it.
I always use the optometrist as my example, is kind of when you've been living your life for a year, but then you go in for your eye appointment, you're like, right, Jesus, I haven't been able to see for like 6 months.
Yeah. And you just don't realize it because it kind of got slowly worse or whatever.
Right.
I think, and it, you know, which is certainly not to disparage other things I've done, because I think that the things that I'm good at, I think I'm really, really good at, but having just those little tweaks and the little things to be aware of work. Like I was listening to an older Stoneburner record the other day, and I was like, this is actually really solid. Like everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it's always scary going back and listening to something, from, however long ago.
Right. Is
Because
this
like, oh, now I thought it was good at the time, but no, actually it was okay. So that was kind of a nice realization also.
so we have so much that I want to touch on. So aside from music, you've
Mhm.
had some really exciting things come up since
Yeah.
we last
Mhm.
talked that were outside of music. And I think
Mhm.
this goes too when you're talking about, I don't know, the anger that you're unleashing in your music and kind of what's inspiring that. But I think that also plays a factor in your visual art, your paintings that
Mhm.
you're doing, and also you had this amazing project in terms of audiobooks and cassette
Yeah.
put out. So I want to hear too about kind of how those projects have been shaped by your experience and what's going on.
Yeah. So before, about 4 years ago, I listen to a lot of audiobooks all the time. Just it's a good way for me to read while I'm working. And the I've never been particularly interested in Poe, but at one point, The Mask of the Red Death came up in a few books right in a row as a reference,
Nice.
and then a short story kind of based on it by a guy named John Langan called Technicolor.
Mhm.
Came under my radar, and I was like, all right, so I need to go and look into it. And so I did, and I ended up doing a graphic novel version of it. And I was able to get John Langan, who wrote that story, to write the foreword for it, and it was cool. I got blurbed by like Neil Gaiman and a bunch of other cool authors for it, and then so I did that like 4 years ago, and then I sat on it, and then I guess a couple of years ago, when COVID came up, I was like, well, now's the perfect time to do this. So, I sent it off to the publisher, and we packaged it all up and submitted it for Stoker, and it got nominated for Excellence in a Graphic Novel. And I thought, well, it'd be really cool to do an audiobook version of this, because I've done a lot of stuff with audio and like the very first things Donna and I ever did. Literally the first recordings we have that we did together was Donna doing poetry over sound and things like that. So I've got a decent amount of experience with that. And I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to do an audiobook version of this that has a score to it and atmosphere. And so one day I was just sitting there painting, and this guy, I was listening to a collection of stories by Shirley Jackson, and one of them was read by a guy named Stefan Rudnicki. And I was like, you know what the hell? And because we live in the future, I jumped on Twitter and I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, I'm interested in doing this. I sent him a couple examples of some stuff I've done, and not really knowing too much about him other than I just liked his voice. Well, turns out he was like a 2-time Grammy winner guy who was like on the board for Audible, and they have their own audiobook publisher, and like
Kind of a big deal.
yeah, kind of no idea, not a clue. And if you listen to that, he's got this amazing, incredible voice. And at one point, we've been talking back and forth online. And I was like, well, here's my number. Give me a call. Please call me after like X amount of time, because I have a sleep disorder, so I'm usually just not awake during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there watching TV, and my phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize, but for some reason I picked it up, and it's just this guy's voice. It's like, hello, Mr. Night Owl. And I was just like, holy shit, I'm in the Justice League. So that was just this really fun experience. And so we did the thing, and he was really happy with it. And he had gotten into, like, he had been trained for opera.
Sure.
And so he understands the music and how it interacts with this. And he's always, I think he's been doing it his whole career. So finding new things to make it interesting is always cool. And
Like we
he
talked
really,
about a minute ago, like a
yeah,
career like that, how do you find a way to, I don't know,
yep,
make the spark, when
yep,
you have that much time in?
yeah, exactly. I mean, and he's, top of his field. And so we had a lot of that in common, and we got the book out, and he was like, I've got free time coming up. Do you want to keep doing more of these? So I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and he was like, well, how do you want to do this? And I was like, well, see, the way I see it, it's pretty easy because it doesn't cost anything. We both have our own studios. So
Right.
literally all it does, it costs you the, what, 2.5 hours it's going to take to record the thing. And then, for me, it's just writing material for it. So I've already got, a decent chunk of pieces of
Sure.
soundscapes and things like that that I can just drop in and move around until it works. And I was like, so otherwise it's just time, and you've got distribution, so we don't even have to worry about that. So we're doing a 2 CD set based around the idea of Carcosa, and some of the real, and it's great because all the stuff we're using is out of copyright.
Yes.
So a lot of the old school, weird tales type things. Yeah. And yeah, so at some point over the next month or so, he'll have his part done, and whatever I haven't written, I'm just going to write while we're on the road. And the plan is to have it out by Halloween, so that'll be really cool.
See, that's awesome. And honestly, I've always felt like this is something that, I don't know, should have been more the future. And maybe it's just because personally for me, I love it. But I've always been a big audiobook person.
Yeah.
And I've going way back, I think I was one of the early people, my account to sign up for Audible,
Mm-hmm.
way back. And I don't know, I must have 500 or 600 at this point,
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wondered why more kind of like you've done, people didn't make it more interactive. I mean, there's a little bit of that in the audiobook world, but really not a huge focus on background sounds and
Yeah.
music and just things to enhance the reader's picture that's being painted for you. Because to me, for the reason you just said, especially when I'm driving, I don't really prefer to listen to music a lot. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old or something, but I want to, when I'm listening to music, I need to be engaged.
Right.
And when I'm driving, I can put an audiobook on. I hate the idea of nowadays people have a screen going where they're watching freaking television in their car, which happens a lot. But I do want to be, I'd rather be told a story that was all sonic so I can just be on the road, do my thing, hear it while I'm driving.
Right.
And I think I love hearing that in somebody like you and somebody like him who understands that place that touches between a beautifully woven story and the subtle sonic cues and cadence deliveries and things like that go to making that story hit emotionally when you're not allowed to kind of read it and put the picture together yourself.
Right. Yeah. And there were lots of little fun elements to it. Like at one point, if I did a mask, one of the characters is walking from room to room, and each time, they change from room to room, I changed the reverb to give a different sort of reflection as you move through. And I think because I'm just such a visual person, it's very easy for me to picture the spaces. So it's like, okay, so as he walks into this room, well, there's a window. So that window means I'm going to be bringing in some of the sounds that I've got when the characters are actually outside the building. So
it's a kitchen, so linoleum is going to have a different sound.
Right.
I think a lot of times in an audiobook, that's just it. It's the thing you'd mail in. It's the thing you wouldn't pay the difference between a wooden floor and a linoleum floor. You just use walking on floor sound.
Right.
But the fact that you're doing that subtle difference, you don't think about it.
Right. Yeah, and that's the idea. It's not something like that. Yeah. Or we did an audiobook. So when Apex Predator came out, there's a song on there called Contracting Iris.
Yes.
My friend Peter Watts, who wrote blind sight, which technology implies belligerence, was loosely wrapped up with. Um, and when I did that song, I was like, well, the song is either about a girl named Iris or a disease named Iris. And I started writing it and kind of figuring it out, and it basically ended up being about how they kind of interact and why.
Sure.
And so I was like, do you want to write a story based on this? Because this is right up your alley. So he did that, and I put it, there's a downloadable version on the record. But then when we did the single for it, Donna recorded the dialogue for the as a reader for the whole thing, and I did the same sort of thing with that. And when we had a lot of fun, because there's different, like, at one point she used to talk to kind of a auto therapy program, and so I was able to like tweak her vocals to make them more electronic sounding, and just little things like that, and just trying to find ways to using music as an actual way of building tension in addition to just what the story is, which was also a lot of fun.
Because I mean, if every TV show I've ever watched, since the beginning of time, MASH or whatever, going back, or the Donna Reed show or something, they always do that. You always have music that builds, as you said, tension. But when audiobooks became a thing and came along, it just wasn't used on that level. I'm not saying nobody did it. Some people
I can kind of understand why, because I mean, if you're looking at a full-length book, I mean, that's 12 hours, 14, 24 hours sometimes. Like, so scoring something like that is ridiculous. There are ways around it, but one of the nice things I imagine for audiobooks is that it's relatively low cost. You have to pay your reader, and then, it's all digital from there on. There are, Blackstone does have physical copies that you can get. Like, I've got CD versions of Mask, but yeah, it's definitely it would be a lot harder to I think to do, and then to do it well, and particularly if you start thinking in terms of volume, like, okay, yeah, you just scored a 14-hour book. Well, here's our next one. It's 14 hours too, and you can't reuse that stuff. So
it was kind of like we talked about earlier. Sometimes you're right, although that's engaging, and you got to pick your battles, because cost, time, effort. I mean, these are things. So I do want to now jump onto something that was really exciting to me. You and I have had conversations before that were both in a lot of ways progressive rock fans, or with whether we've talked Genesis, we've talked Pink Floyd, things like that. And you recently got to do a project that involved the Mr. Alan Parsons himself.
Yeah.
That was so exciting when I heard it. Tell me about what happened.
Well, this is actually a really good segue, because Contracting Iris, the entire first third of it, musically, the theme, is a sample from an Alan Parsons Project song. So that was just kind of a neat thing. It came through a really strange route. A fan knows a guy who wrote this song with them and performs with them. I guess he's a sax player also, I think. And he offered this gig to my friend, and then they were like, well, I can't do it. They showed him my work and put me in touch with them. And it took an awful lot to actually engage and go. I really thought about it for a little bit as it came up. It was like, could I actually do something like this given the limitations? Because I knew it had to happen fairly quickly. Yeah. And once it kind of went through, and I was like, yeah, okay, no, yeah, I can do this. And so I get in touch with this guy, talk to him about it, go over my ideas, and he puts me in touch with their person. And and then we just went from there. We had a very short window to do the thing in, and we were very limited because they were in the middle of doing shows. So, like, originally what I had hoped to do was just to get Alan to do some green screen shots, and I was like, so I ended up setting up a mock set and recording myself going through, and this is what I want you to do.
Yeah.
This is how you should light it. And then we didn't end up going that route. The other thing that's worth mentioning, so when I was a kid, the 4 big bands I had, because I was really, really cool, were Pink Floyd, Tangerine Dream, Styx, and Alan Parsons Project.
I mean,
singer for the song is Tommy Shaw from Styx.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to like check off 2 right there, which is very neat. And so I was like, okay, so if we get Tommy doing this on a green screen, we get Alan doing this on the green screen, then I'll be able to pull it all together. But just because of time and schedules, we weren't able to do that. So we had to kind of all of a sudden figure out a whole new way to do it. Fortunately, if I was to claim any single superpower, it would be that I have more ideas I know what to do with. So I was able to pretty quickly go, okay, how about this, or this? Pick one. This one I think will be the most effective. This one I don't think is a good idea, but we'll do it if we have to. And then we just kind of went with what we ended up with. I did end up having a very scary moment where I had to basically turn to my boss in this and go, if I think that this is a really bad idea, what you want to do, I think is a very bad idea. These are the reasons I think it's a bad idea. I'm sorry, I hate saying this, but I think if we do it, you're not going to get the results that you want.
Sure.
And you will run the risk of fans who look at Alan as one of the greatest producers of our time, right, being represented by something that looks not very good.
Sure.
But I was also able to kind of come up with solutions that worked in the ideas that they wanted, without having to sacrifice the quality of the content. And so I was very happy with that.
Scary too when you've got as you said, a boss, a new boss, where
right,
they're asking for a particular product on it. You don't always know who the boss you're talking to is if you haven't worked with them a lot. And some of them are very much, I hired you as an expert because this is what I want, and I will listen to you on how to best make that happen. And then sometimes you will have a boss that is a 180 from that and just says, even though I hired a technical expert to help me, I don't have any reason to listen to them because I know more about literally everything in the universe.
Exactly. Well, and so because the job came up so fast, I at one point I wrote her because I was concerned that might come up as a problem. It was like, so at no point did I give you my CV. So I'm going to break this down as clear as I can. These are all the things I'm very good at.
Sure.
These are all the things that I know enough about, and I have resources that I can fill in gaps. Right. These are all the things I should probably know how to do and don't. So just, as we're going through this, I want to make sure that we do not end up in a situation where you feel I misrepresented myself.
Right.
Because I will get you something that looks good and that works and that solves all of the problems, but it's going to be within these parameters. And I can learn these other things, but if there's a time limit, which there was, we did the final thing in like a week and a half. I knocked the entire video out. So if there's a time limit, I'm probably not your guy, because there are going to be people that know more about this than I do. If there isn't a time limit, I will find something and it will work and it will look good, but it will take me, there'll be a little bit of a learning curve. I've worked with industry people before, and as you said, one of the big dangers is, well, I don't care if you can do it, get it done, because that is your job. And now, admittedly, I was essentially a contractor, so I could, if they had said that, I could have just been like, well, no, because if I do it, it's going to look like garbage. So, you can either find somebody else or you can work with what I can do for you, which will look good. It just might not be exactly what you've got in your head. And working with them was really great because they were very flexible with everything, and we worked really well together. It was actually a very, very much like working with John or with Christian. Like, it was a very good working relationship, and both of us by the time we were done with it, felt very comfortable with like, okay, well, how do we make this work? And we were very aware of each other's limits. So that was really cool. The other very exciting thing for me was at one point, I think the first record I had by them was Turn of a Friendly Card. And at one point, the guy who wrote Turn of a Friendly Card saw the video and liked it. And I was just like, that's cool. So it's neat because in this tiny, tiny little way, you know, I am attached to the guy who helped record the White Album or mix Dark Side of the Moon, you know, and so like that's real rock history, you know. It's and that's pretty fucking cool. Like yeah. You know, I did music that literally went into space for NASA, and then doing this thing, and it's just a neat. You know, I was talking to Dan on Sound and Shadows about how every once in a while, you know, you'll have these things. It's like, how do you keep that up? And I was like, that's the fun part. You don't. You have these moments, and they're really, really cool, and you can try to get other ones, but mostly it's just seeing when you getting a chance to maybe do this, knowing that you have the ability to do it, and feeling like I can not just technically do this, but I feel like I have the social skills to interact in such a way that we can come up, but we will resolve it and it will all come together well. So
I think that goes too to, I mean, it was funny. It was interesting when you were saying that, when you were talking about both your relationship with your label, with Christian, and talking about the video projects, or with some of these authors that have meant a lot to you. I know I say to myself often, hey, Ken, are you just finding all these amazing people later in your life? Or what has changed about you that, like you said, makes communication easier because you're older and wiser, and all of a sudden, maybe people who wouldn't have made sense in your 20s, suddenly you have a common ground and can talk to each other. I mean, there's something that too.
Well, for you specifically, though, I mean, you do one of the big things that I do, and that anybody else who's kind of getting anywhere with whatever it is, you put yourself out there, and you love it, and you're honest about what you can do, what you can't do, but you put the work in, you put the time into doing it. And when you are 20 or 30 even, or whatever, like you haven't done that yet. So just by virtue of having, you know, I was talking to somebody at one point about, here, I'm not saying that you're bad or awful or whatever. I am saying that every day for the last 30 years, I've spent about 3 or 4 hours painting and 3 or 4 hours working on music, and you haven't. And that's why I'm getting these chances to do these things, and you're not. It's not because I'm a better person than you because of this. I've just done the work. And when you do that work, eventually, if you keep up at it and don't let yourself get too frustrated or whatever, or give up because you're not getting the accolades that you think you want, it will hopefully happen. But none of it is instant. And if it is instant, if you happen to have a moment where all of a sudden everything opens up for you, be very, very concerned.
Sure. I think another part of it is building these relationships is really important. And yeah, I mean, I think that's easier for me today at 40 than it was, like you said, at 25.
Right.
More than that, what I definitely have worked on a lot and got a bit is maintaining relationships. Because it might have been 10 years ago that I knew someone, that I had this contact, and nothing happened from that. No result. Kind of like you said, you know, on the audio book, working with it, or on Alan Parsons. You never knew how that was going to unfold or take effect, but a decade down the line, something comes up where they put you in touch with a person who puts you in touch with a person, and now suddenly a big exciting thing happens for you. You know?
Yeah. And as you build this network, you're kind of developing a sense of value for yourself with these people. And so it gives you kind of a cool thing where, like, you can call somebody up and go, I need to get in touch with this person, or is there a way to do it? do you know of something that maybe I can back channel or get in touch with whoever it is through the proper channels, but get a little bit more priority?
Yeah.
And sometimes they can do that. Sometimes there's because you have demonstrated that you can do the thing. Like I've had people come up to me and ask for something, like to try and get in touch with somebody or whatever. And most of the time I just pull out I'd love to, but I can't. But every once in a while I will meet somebody and be like, I'm really fucking impressed by what you're doing. Please write me so I can forward this on to the proper person.
Sure.
Because I think that you're doing this thing. Like when we took Servitor out with Ego, we watched 5 minutes of their set and I was like, I want them on the next tour. And then it was just about making all the pieces come together. So every once in a while somebody will pop up and you're able, me personally am able to kind of reach out and go, I'm trying to make this happen, or somebody can come to me and I can go, okay, hey, yeah, cool. Like, here's how you get in touch with Ethan. I watched that interview, by the way. Great. I love Ethan.
Such an interesting guy. And I
really
mean, so much, I don't know, knowledge that I didn't know about going back, especially in like New York and everything. Just, really cool guy.
It's funny, before we worked with him as a booking agent, I was interacting with him in the early 90s DJing. And I remember I was on the phone with him and he was working on Gothbox. And I remember him putting the phone down for a second and hearing him yelling, no, we can't do it like that. We're Cleopatra. We're going to do this the right way.
It was funny. I talked to Rachel about that he's such a chill, soft-spoken guy, especially the interview. But I joked with Rachel when she was hearing me listen to the interview, and I kind of said, I could just picture Ethan being the type of guy, though, that could turn on a dime and be like, all right, listen here, pal. We need to get these out today. And this is a serious, I could just see that, him turning on a dime and going full, like, high-powered lawyer on you.
I think that's one of the things that people kind of not gloss over, but maybe don't recognize that if you do this for a certain amount of time, even as within a band or whatever, you have to have business savvy or it doesn't work. Like, otherwise you're going to get screwed. And so, I've had to do that kind of thing. We took a band out on tour once and they did some stuff and I sat them down and I was like, look, I like you guys, but for the next 20 minutes, I'm not your friend, I'm your boss. Yeah. All you are to me is what happens between when doors open and when we go on stage. And if you continue to fuck this up, you're gone. Yeah. And because it's just, you have to be able to have those things that are clear. Because it's like, it's one thing if you're off doing your own thing and you're screwing it up, but if you're directly impacting my relationship with venues that we've been working with forever, or financial things or whatever, then it's a real problem. So
messing with my money is like messing with my emotions. All right. Yeah. So we have two more things that I want to hit on real quick. Number one, you have a new video that's going to be coming up, and unlike some of the things you've kind of talked about, these loftier space sci-fi concepts, this one goes to our love of horror, and specifically the physical effects from the pictures I've seen that you've been posting and whatnot. Tell me a little taste of what you have coming up.
It's funny because remember I was talking about how you have to always be flexible and you have to always have these ideas. I was going to be doing this whole video with puppets, and built this really cool wolf puppet that I was going to do. And let me tell you, it's a lot harder than I was expecting it to be. And I have 2 weeks before this tour. So last night I kind of hit on this thing. I was like, okay, well, if I can't get the basic shots tonight, I can't do this thing because I have to put some. So I can't go that route, unfortunately. But I am going to do it more in that kind of fake animation style. So the basic idea will still be there. Yeah. But the original idea was going to be a puppet massacre where this wolf is the DJ and there's people in the club dancing and some Nazi skins walk in or whatever. And halfway through the video, it's all just done as puppetry, but up until that point, at which point I wanted to make it the most bloody, visceral puppet show ever, with actual like real proper gore, where he's just ripping off heads, and it's just the heads may look like puppets, but inside it's just going to be just
Yes.
cow brains and intestines and things
Taster
like
of
that.
moments. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe at some point I'll be able to do that still. I learned a lot doing it, but it's just unfortunately I don't have the time to do all the refining that I would need to do, and I really need to actually have the show together instead. So
maybe this will, because you want to go back to it, go along with what we were talking about. If anybody out there in Sounds and Shadows verse has a contact with Jim Henson Studios and knows a lot about puppetry, please reach out to Steven. He'd be interested in hearing from you.
I actually have a contact of a guy in Australia or New Zealand who's on my page who does all of that stuff. And it was definitely a learning experience, because the big problem, one of the big problems was that I don't think in puppets, I think in visual art. So I made this puppet and it looks really good, but holding it up over your head like this and performing at the same time gets really tiring, and just all these other little elements I didn't think of.
I remember you saying that, and it goes back to everything we just said. You're such a person who are like, what is it going to look like on video? I need to think about 10 million things that go into that. But the one thing that just never hit your head was,
right. Yeah.
I didn't even have to have my hand over my head holding this wooden monstrosity that weighs 58 pounds and eventually. Yeah.
And even little stuff like at Dark Side of the Con, I fell and I fucked up my thumb somehow. I don't know exactly what it was I did. All I know is it still kind of hurts. I didn't break it, but I think I tore a tendon or something. Sure. And so just doing this for 5 minutes at a time for the song was really painful. So yeah, like that, there were all of these little things. So now it's cool. I've actually kind of been right before I came and did this, I was actually kind of going over the song in my head and figuring out different ways to make it all work and at least keep it interesting. So the solution will work. It won't be the one that I was planning on, but it will work.
All right, so final shout out here, because we are at time.
Yep.
But the other thing, we couldn't get through a whole interview without giving a shout out to something that Donna is doing too. And so she has a new poetry book. I mean, she's been a part of this award show and just gotten so many accolades for these poems that she's doing, which are gorgeous and amazing. Give a shout out to the newest one, when it's coming out, and where folks can find that.
It will be out in the fall. I want to say November, but it might be right before that. It's called Girls from the County. And we actually are looking at doing a proper book tour next year. And it will be kind of like a half and half. We'll be doing like book tours and then some sort of other element of performance. I don't know if it's going to be like a Stoneburner sound system thing or DJ gigs or whatever. But it's really interesting. It's about, I mean, we live in a very rural area where Donna grew up, and it's about the mythologies that there's a witch in that house over there. Yeah. That some of it's fiction. Unfortunately, a lot of it is very, very real horror, and about the things that happen, how like there's the one person in school who you hear these stories about, and maybe talking about the actual truth behind those things and how it propagates out through the conversations.
Yeah. And I mean, just how they get passed down generationally. A lot of these, like you said, were based on something that really happened, maybe in 1918, which wasn't as fantasy or whatnot. But as the years have gone on, it kind of takes this Bloody Mary. I know for us in Detroit, Nine Rouge, like different kind of supernatural aspects as time has gone on. But in reality, it was a scary dude at one point or something,
Right. Yeah. But she's also talked a lot about like the very real horrors and how those, like the things that you can't or don't get talked about or get rumored about, but you never know whether or not X thing really happened and how you deal with it and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I'm really, really proud of her. It's when oh, for anybody who doesn't know, a while back she got Lyme disease, which turned into fibromyalgia, and has really fucked her up. It basically ate the part of her brain that knew how to play piano, and it really messed up her ability to write. And so over the past number of years since that happened, she had to kind of relearn how to write. And so the fact that she has, done it and done it as well as she has been huge.
So I mean, that's terrifying, having to retrain the circuitry of your brain to do something that always came naturally to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like basically all of the things that she was always able to rely on, except singing. Singing she didn't have an issue with, but I mean, she'd been playing piano since she was 6. So it's just part of who she is, and all of a sudden that's gone. So it's a remarkable thing that she was able to do. It's also incidentally one of the reasons that things are so long between ego likeness stuff. We are actually planning on being out a little bit more. I've got some stuff that I think will work very well for ego, but it's always been hard for us, but this made it way harder.
Sure.
To make it all come together. But the book is fantastic, and
and you have exciting stuff for ego likeness. I like that you just dropped that coming up, because it has been, I know there's been a lot of focus on your Stoneburner project, and I know that was a big part of it, that it was difficult, but you guys still have a huge fan base of people that do want to see music that's the collaboration of you and Donna. And I remember when we saw that last Stoneburner show, that was one of the pop moments. I don't know, I'm using wrestling terminology, but for me, like one of those pop moments where Donna comes out during the Stoneburner set and just does a little vocals and singing, but the whole crowd just lost their shit, because people still long for that and want to see it. And so we're very exciting to hear new material coming up for ego likeness.
Well, and like I said, I mean, I'm not promising anything. I've got stuff written that I think would work very, very well for it. We both love it. It's really just it's just an issue of finding it. Finding the vocabulary and that place. So it's not something we're doing. Gothic Cruise coming up, and then we're doing a local show with the Dead Milkmen in the fall. It's very frustrating when you kind of, it's never been on the back burner. It's just trying to find the ingredients.
Well, and like we've kind of talked about too, the other big thing of when you have that kind of fan base and this many years in, you're not going to put out an ego likeness release after waiting several years and have it be half baked. Like it has to be, so I think that's really important too, is it's one of those things where it's going to take as long as it takes to have it be the album that you need it to be.
Yeah. And I will say to anybody who actually is still into ego and all that stuff, I am forever amazed that we can go out and do festivals and headline these festivals, and you all still come out, and thank you for that, because it's just we love that material and love getting up and getting a chance to be those people, and the fact that you guys still want that is incredible. I know it means the world to Donna, because I mean, you have to understand that from where we sit, we're just a couple of people who live in the woods doing this thing that we do. And it's like, it's not necessarily that you take it for granted, but it's just part of this life for so long. And then to actually go out and perform and have it really mean something to other people besides us that you don't know personally. Like, it always blows my mind that we have fans that we don't personally know, because we interact with people so much online. So thank you for all of that, with that, with Stoneburner, with everything, with art and music.
So I knew we were going to do this. Oh, we did a nice big long interview again, as we always do. But you know what? It's always a pleasure talking to you, Stephen. I'm so stoked for the stuff that you have coming up. I'm so glad that you're going to play a special Ken Magerman's birthday show in
Absolutely.
Detroit at Smalls in August. I hope everybody comes out and sees that show because it's going to be an amazing tour. And really, especially for people up in the Midwest, if you've never got a chance to see Chant as well, Bradley Bills, it is something you have to experience. It is
fantastic.
Absolutely next level.
Oh, and also he will be on tour with KMFDM after my tour. So
right.
that's,
so there's a fun act.
Definitely come to mine, but also you can do that one.
Yes. So as always, a pleasure, Stephen. For all of you, we will spin out to a Stoneburner track here. And for all of you out in interweb land, keep it dark, yo, and keep the faith.
Thank you.
sweat, and with parchment and with gold.